Pues buenas tardes a todos, bienvenidas y bienvenidos. De parte de la Asociación de Emprendedores Veganos de México, estamos encantados de que nos acompañen al programa de lujo que tenemos hoy. Tenemos la gran fortuna de contar con un señor emprendedor del veganismo, pionero de pioneros, con una historia y una experiencia valiosísimas para quienes estamos en este camino. Él es alguien que comenzó cuando no había nada que se asemejara ni remotamente a un mercado vegano, algo por ahí de hace unos 41 años, ¿no? Y a quien debemos agradecer haber realmente picado piedra y abierto camino para muchos. Su historia tiene grandes lecciones y mensajes para quienes compartimos esta misión. Pero déjenme compartirles un poco sobre quién es Seth Tibbott. En 1980, antes de que existiera un mercado para alimentos veganos en Gringolandia, como él llama su país, Seth Tibbott fundó The Tofurky Company con los ahorros de su vida, que equivalían a unos 55,000 pesos de hoy. Él era un maestro y naturalista que nunca en su vida había tomado una clase de negocios, así que era bastante ignorante sobre cómo hacer dinero. Lo que sí tenía era una fuerte creencia y convicción en un alimento vegano de soya llamado tempe, que había estado haciendo para sus amigos y su familia por varios años. Después de 15 años, el negocio de tempe todavía no dejaba ganancias, pero gradualmente Seth se volvía menos ignorante en el tema de negocios. En 1995, cuando estaba a punto de rendirse y de aventar la toalla, la empresa lanzó un tofu relleno al horno llamado Tofurky. El producto fue todo un hit y ahora se vende en más de 27,000 tiendas alrededor del mundo y la compañía está valuada en más de 100 millones de dólares, que equivale a más de 2,200 millones de pesos. A Seth le encanta México y se ve que ha tenido algunas experiencias muy interesantes en nuestro país, entre ellas haber pasado una Navidad con un grupo de monjas increíbles en Barranca del Cobre y también haber pasado una noche en la cárcel en Salina Cruz. Seth está súper emocionado de ver la gran presencia que está ganando el veganismo en México. Entonces, para no quitarles más tiempo y entrar de lleno con Seth, lo que quiero hacer nada más es darles un poco de instrucciones. El chat, como ya vieron, está abierto para que por favor nos vayan poniendo ahí sus preguntas, sus comentarios a lo largo de la presentación y Seth al final va a responder esas preguntas. También para aquellos de ustedes que prefieran escuchar la charla de Seth en español, vamos en un momentito a habilitar la función de interpretación y les voy a explicar cómo funciona. En la barra que aparece abajo de su pantalla, hacia el lado derecho, verán que dice interpretación. Si entran ahí, ahorita en cuanto yo lo habilite, van a poder ver que existe un canal en inglés y un canal en español. Y ahí podrán ustedes seleccionar. Si quieren escucharlo en inglés, se pueden simplemente quedar aquí, no tienen que cambiarse de canal, pero para escucharlo en español, sí se necesitan cambiar de canal, ahí seleccionar el canal en español. Aprovecho para darle las gracias a Nayeli Aguilera por la interpretación de esta charla. Hoy ella la va a interpretar al español. Y entonces, en este momento, en cuanto mi mouse me funcione, a ver, voy a, denme un segundo, para habilitar la interpretación. Entonces, una disculpa que mi mouse está lento. Ya. Ahí está. Entonces, quien quiera cambiarse ahora sí al canal de español, por favor, entren a la función de interpretación en la barra de abajo de su pantalla hacia el lado derecho y seleccione el canal de español. Y ahora, si no les robo más tiempo, y los dejo con Seth Tibbott.
Gracias, Rosillo, y buenas tardes todo el mundo. Lo siento, mi español es muy, muy malo, entonces voy a hablar en inglés. I will speak a little slow today so that our translation team can translate this into Spanish, but it's an honor to be here. I love Mexico.
Por estar aquí, me encanta México, me encanta la cultura, me encanta la comida y sobre todo me encantan las personas de México porque son muy generosos, son muy amables. Hemos tenido muchos trabajadores en nuestra fábrica de México y son los mejores trabajadores y los más amables de todo el mundo, así que es un honor para mí estar aquí. Voy a hablar el día de hoy sobre el mercado emergente que existe y que antes no existía en 1980 cuando yo comenzaba. Y también voy a hablar sobre cómo sobreviví todos esos años antes de que el mercado vegano realmente tuviera un gran impulso y fuera redituable. Hoy en día es una locura aquí en Gringolandia. Sé que en México también está haciendo muchas cosas muy increíbles y al igual que en todo el mundo, el mercado vegano está creciendo. Así que voy a compartirles mi historia.
Overnight success story, and I'm going to just share some of the tips that hopefully will help you survive in this Mexican emerging market and actually market your products all over the world. I do go by the name of Pepe when I'm in Mexico, so you can call me Seth, you can call me Pepe. All right, let's get started. This is what vegans eat in Gringolandia. It's just a bunch of grains and veggies with a little bit of sriracha and yeast poured over the top. I think it's a law up here that the sriracha and the yeast, every vegan has these in their cupboard up here. Maybe you have them in Mexico, but that's what we eat here in Gringolandia. In 1971, there was no information about how horrible animals were treated that were raised for food. There was no information about the health aspects of the vegan diet, but there was this book that I read, Diet for a Small Planet, by this woman, Frances Moore Lepay. And she was the first person to write about how inefficient it was to raise protein from beef cattle. And this really struck home to me because I was a naturalist. And when I read that on a standard American diet, 2 football fields would feed 1 person for a year, but 2 football fields on a vegan diet would feed 14 people for a year. So that meant that we could, if everybody in the world was vegan, we would have 5 billion more football fields worth of land that we could return to forests. And I thought, wow, this would be so incredible. So that became my mission. After 2 years later, I found this guy, Stephen Gaskin, who was the guru of a place in Tennessee called The Farm. And The Farm had 1,200 hippies living on 1,600 acres of land, and they were eating a vegan diet, all of them. They didn't call it vegan, they called it pure vegetarian diet. The word vegan had been invented, but it wasn't really in use yet. So the farm was an amazing place. They actually had a soy dairy all over the world. They had one in Solala, Guatemala. They had some in Sri Lanka and all over the world. They were here on a mission. They had this bus that said "Out to Save the World" on the front, and that was what they were doing. And one of the things that they taught me was they said, learn how to make a living for yourself and some other people. Get strong enough to take care of somebody besides yourself. And above all, don't get caught doing something dumb. Don't get caught in a job that will be phased out when the money gets tough. And right now, the money is tough because the virus has turned Gringolandia on end. But we have been doing fine at Tofurky, and I know Mr. Tofu and other businesses in Mexico have too, because you're doing an essential job. So that was a good advice right there. So I became vegan after going and visiting the farm, but I also took with me some tempeh spores because the farm was the first place in America to make tempeh spores that you could make tempeh from. But they also were into tofu. They made ice cream out of soybeans. They made yogurt out of soybeans and milk. So they were the cutting edge of soy foods. I went back to my tent I was living in that summer. I was teaching kids about the outdoors in Tennessee, and I made my first batch of tempeh. And this was moldy soybeans. So this is a picture of the staff after they ate that meal, and they all thought they were going to die. This is what I call the waiting around to die photo, because it was mold and all. But I loved tempeh. I thought it was the greatest food I had ever eaten, and it's so good today. I even had it for lunch today, but tempeh was my dream. But back then, this is what the plant-based foods section looked like in America. Nothing. There was no tofu, no tempeh, no soy milk, no yogurt, nothing, 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 no cheese. There was only one thing, and that was granola. That was the first vegan product that I ever saw in a store. And I was fascinated by granola. When college, I had to make my own granola in 1970. Couldn't buy it in the store. 9 years later, I went back to my college town and the shelf was full of granola. So this was a little light bulb went off in my head. And I thought, granola went from nothing to having a whole section in the supermarket. I think tempeh could do the same thing. So that was my first tip. And that is, the future is always dropping hints. And right now, your job as an entrepreneur is to think not necessarily what's popular today, but what is going to be popular in 5 years and 10 years, and prepare for that day. And right now, the world is screaming that vegan foods are going to be huge and huger, and they are not going away anytime soon. This is not a fad. So I say, you get the dream, that you prepare for. So get ready, because a big vegan wave is going to engulf the world, and in years to come, it's going to be huge. Okay, in 1980, I started this business called Turtle Island Soy Dairy, and I had 3 tempeh products: soy tempeh, 5-grain tempeh, and temperoni, which was tempeh sausage. I could make 40 kilos in 8 hours in this old refrigerator that I found under a bridge. And I made it into an incubator, and it cost my whole shop that I was making the tempeh in, which was this building, it cost $2,500 US. So that was how I started. After I signed up for a business, I went to visit my Aunt Rosie. Here she is, for Christmas. And I was so excited. And after dinner, I sat down with Aunt Rosie and I told her about my plan to sell moldy soybeans to the American public. She stopped me and she said, Seth, listen to me. This is a terrible idea. America is a meat-eating country, and it's always going to be a meat-eating country. Nobody is going to want to eat your soybeans, especially not moldy soybeans. So that was her advice. And the teachers in the school I was working in part-time said the same thing. When you are just starting your business, you are trying to talk yourself into believing that this is an idea good enough to put time and money into. Reasonable people tell you that your idea really isn't worth the risk. You think it might be. They say you don't know enough about business. You agree with that, but you're willing to learn as you go. More businesses were ruined by the lack of faith in the entrepreneur than any other reason. You have to believe, you have to go all in on your dream. Tofurky worked through all these years because it had to work. I didn't have another plan, so I just had to stick to it. In about a year later, I needed a bigger place. So I looked all over the city. I couldn't find anything for the money that I had because I was only grossing $1,000 a month, not very much. So I went to the country and I found an old school building that was 75 miles from Portland, which was my main market, Portland, Oregon. And me and this long-haired dude from the farm, Alex, and some other local workers, we started making tempeh in this school building that I was able to rent for only $150 a month. It was a great deal. I had my own gym where I could shoot baskets in my spare time, and I had 4 different classrooms to store beans and to rent to others. So moving to the country was very good for me, and you can find incredible deals in the country that you can never find in a city. I was really poor. I didn't have much money. So one thing I did was I needed a place to live. I rented 4 trees from a neighbor for $25 a month. And that was my home, was in this tree house that I built. And I lived there for 7 years. I was only making $300 a month, but I was really happy to see my dream going forward. I went to another commune that found me, was in Oregon, and this was the Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, who had a big festival in Oregon where he needed 2,000 pounds of tempeh, 1,000 kilos of tempeh for this big feed that they were going to have. So this is the biggest tempeh meal ever eaten in the United States. It was fed to 10,000 people, and this is the kitchen that cooked it. I was also messing around with burgers, and we had tempeh burgers, we had different kinds. My brand was growing. But as you can see, my income wasn't. This is the amount of money I made each year from 1973 to 1989. And this is the sales of the business that I started. For the first 9 years, after 9 years, I was only making $120,000 in gross sales. That's not what I would take home. All I could take home was 5,606 pesos per month. So that was what I was living on. But the dream was alive. I loved that I had gone from this amount of money all the way up to 120,000. It wasn't much. I wasn't really making money, but the mission was going well. And that's my next tip. Remember why you are in business. A worthy mission can keep you going. It's always there as a reward, even when the money isn't. It might be the difference between failure and getting to your breakthrough moment. I have never seen a vegan business that wasn't at least partly mission-based. And that, my friends, is our superpower as plantrepreneurs or vegan entrepreneurs. We have a mission, and I know that in your heart, all of you share the mission of creating a vegan world. And that keeps you going because so much about business is just turning that key every day. Every day that you do it, you learn a little bit more and you're just hanging around until the day comes when, boom, the market catches up to you and you have a great product that matches up to that market and you're off to the races. So having a mission and remembering your mission is very important. If I was just in it for the money, after 5 years, I would have quit because I would have said, nuts to this. I'm only making $300 a month. That's not enough to even rent a nice place with a good kitchen. So keep the mission in your heart. After all those first 15 years, I was ready to quit. I was like, I'm a failure. And I had been making tempeh, and tempeh was growing, but it wasn't growing fast enough. So I was messing around with tofu. I thought, well, tofu's more popular. It's been in the country much longer than tempeh. The first tofu shops in Gringolandia was like the 1905. The first tempeh shop was 1976. So I had nothing to eat at this wonderful holiday we call Thanksgiving, where everybody in America sits down with their friends and relatives and they eat pavo, turkey. So I invented the Tofurky feast, which had 8 different tempeh drumsticks, and it had a stuffed tofu roast and gravy. We didn't know what the tofurkeys looked like in the wild, but we knew they had 8 legs. And so that was the pivot, the change that changed my life and the business. Suddenly, I was no longer in obscurity. People were jumping out of airplanes with Tofurky feasts. They were going under the water with Tofurkys. And even the TV was going crazy, game shows, all different types of actresses and actors were bringing them on talk shows. It was a buzz. Tofurky was the hip thing to talk about at Thanksgiving. And even Jeopardy, which is the biggest game show in the United States, had one of its answers was alternative Thanksgiving dish created by entrepreneur Seth Tibbott. And who watched that show? It was my Aunt Rosie, who after she saw that answer and my name on it, she called me up and she said, Seth, this is Aunt Rosie. You were on Jeopardy. I'm so proud of you. I knew it was going to be a success. And I was like, yeah, thanks, Aunt Rosie. But it was an amazing event to have Tofurkys all over the country. And after that, we started to grow and we created Tofurky deli slices and they were a hit. We created Tofurky sausage and they were a hit. And though I was getting smarter at business, but I wasn't real smart yet. But what I did have a knack for that was very important was knowing when to fire yourself. I have done every job at Tofurky. I have made Tofurky, I have made tempeh, I have mopped the kitchen floor, I've been the janitor, I've been the CFO, I've been the salesperson, I've been marketing, I've done them all. So what I noticed though was when I hired somebody else to take over the job of making the tempeh and marketing the tempeh and selling the tempeh, things got better and they did a better job. And that the main reason for that was there's a difference between working on your business and in your business. Let me explain. When you're working in your business, you're doing too much. You're doing all of these different things and you're not focusing on the big picture. When you're working on your business, you're strategizing, you're creating sales, you're doing the big things that you need to be focused on. At first, you can't do that, but when you can, fire yourself from a job. It's great. Firing yourself improves the job. And that has, when I hired my first salesperson in 2002, oh my gosh, things really took off. And it allows you to focus on the big picture. So here's a big tip. Know when to fire yourself and focus on growing and strategizing and networking and doing what you need to do to run the business. This is the Tofurky company today. This is a eco manufacturing plant that has 400 solar panels on the roof. It has a bocce court. It has green plants on the roof. And it has free electric car charging that comes off the solar panels, recycled materials throughout. It's an amazing place to work, and it's right 1 hour east of Portland, Oregon. If you're ever up in Oregon, please come see me. We'd love to show you around. This is our products. There's 43 total Tofurky products, everything from cheesecake to tempeh to pockets to, we're actually next month, we're introducing our own Mucho brand of cheese. We have our own sort of Beyond Burger right here, this plant-based burger. We make roasts, we make chorizo, sausage, deli slices, hot dogs, and 27,000 stores all over the world sell it, including the fabulous Mr. Tofu chain down in Mexico. We are a certified B corporation, which means that we meet the highest standards of social and environmental impact. About 70% of our production staff are from Mexico, which is awesome. Everybody has their health insurance paid for. We pay into retirement funds for everybody, so when they leave us, they have money saved up, or when they retire. And we just really appreciate the workers and everybody in the community that we work with. And this B Corp, you can put it on your package. They come out and they look at your records and how good you are to your employees and what you do for the community and how you lessen your environmental impact. So we're proud of that. Here's one of the most important things that changed my life, of course, was the pivot to Tofurky. When I stopped being only a tempeh company and started with Tofurky, that's when things changed. And when you start a business, you know, you're really at your most stupid moment. Like, you don't know anything about how it's going to go and what you need to do. But as time goes on, the marketplace changes and you become less stupid and more insightful. And you can sometimes, all that separates you from becoming a great company is a small pivot. YouTube used to be a dating site and they made a pivot. Starbucks used to be a coffee machinery company and they pivoted to coffee houses. So some of the greatest businesses that ever were had some kind of pivot and was different from what they started out doing. So think about pivots. If things aren't going well, maybe you need to change your market a little bit. Maybe you need a new product. Maybe you need to make a pivot. Okay, let's talk about money. How do you fund your vegan dream? The way Tofurky grew was like this. We used what's called debt financing and bootstrapping, which is building a company from the ground up with nothing but personal savings, bank loans, and with luck, the cash coming in from the first sales. It started out, what is my secret sauce? For instance, we had a feeling that tofu roasts were going to be a great thing. Then we had to find out who likes my sauce and wants it. In every Tofurky that we sent out that first year, we had a feedback card with a stamp on it. And people wrote in and said what they liked, what they didn't like. And this allowed us to improve the Tofurky. So that's the next step, is how can I improve my secret sauce or my Tofurky? And then how can I sell tons of it? Scaling up is the hardest thing to do. You think that making 5,000 kilos is going to be the same as 1,000 kilos, but it's not. There's always surprises, but that's the exciting part, is scaling up. So there's good and there's bad about this model. You know, you can move quickly, but the growth can be slow. You don't have to listen to somebody else. You don't have other investors. You're your own boss, but you don't get advice from others is the other thing. You learn all the jobs by doing, but you can start out a poor salary. These people at some of these big companies that have sold stock, they're in six figures from the first day. I had 15 years before I made any kind of money to speak of. But you control your growth, and if you have a good idea, you got to be careful because others may take the market from you. And you own all your equity. You own the whole company. You don't have anybody to split the shares up with if you're selling. But you have limited access to money. And often friends and family are the first ones to fund you. The other model is equity financing, which is raising money through the sale of shares. By selling shares, you sell ownership in your company in return for cash. I can tell you this, nobody in 1980 wanted to give me money. I had to rely on my brother, but now there is a lot of money looking for a home in vegan foods. So this is something that you might want to really consider. It's a different market now than it was for me. But the thing about equity financing is you don't have to pay back the money. But don't fall into the trap and think that it's free money. This is the most expensive money you are ever going to borrow, because the people that are loaning you money are going to want a return in 3 to 5 years, and they're going to want you to sell. So there's good and bad with that too. You have the big salary right from the start, but you don't understand all the jobs. I think it's really important that if you're running a company that you understand and that you have done all the jobs. So I really think that's a big one. You do have money to grow, and the investors want fast growth. You have advice available, but it's slower to move because you have to listen to all of these people. You can grow very fast, but that can be stressful. If we grew at 10 to 15% a year, that was manageable. When you get over to 20, 30, 50%, it's very stressful and it can be cancerous growth. You can sell for big money, but your shares are going to be diluted because you've sold part of the company to others. You're not undercapitalized, but too much money can cause too many problems as well. So those are the two basic models, and we can talk about this in our chat after the slideshow is finished. So here's my take on money. Both debt and equity financing are good options, but be clear about your dreams. If you want a family business to pass down to your children, debt financing may be for you. If you want to grow fast and eventually sell, equity financing may be better. There is plenty of money now looking for a home in vegan food startups. If you want to sell your equity, you can now do it. So both are possible, but once you start selling stock to people, you're never turning back. So I like to start out and recommend people start out slow with debt financing if they can, because the longer you stay in business without selling shares, the more value you have and the less of your business you have to give up. So I think, but I think both are good ways to go. Okay, here's the exciting part of the show. Mexico's place in the new vegan world. 3 most encouraging signs. I've been tracking Mexico and also growth all around the world now for at least the last 8 years, when I turned over the presidency of Tofurky to my stepson, Jamie, and I started traveling the world to sell Tofurky and to also talk at conferences and see what's happening in this world. And one of the ways that I look at growth and I see how do you measure what country is doing what is the number of total vegan restaurants in different cities all over the world. And I update this chart every year. And this last year in March, when I updated it, I couldn't believe this. Here was London, #1. That had been #1 for years, so no surprise there. Los Angeles, New York, Tokyo. Everybody talks about Berlin, Germany as being this vegan hotspot. But look at that. They only have 3 more vegan restaurants than Mexico City, which has 80 all vegan restaurants. And this is not a restaurant that sells meat and also vegan products. This is all 100% vegan restaurants. So I was so sad not to be able to come to this conference in March, because I wanted to eat at all 80 of these restaurants. I mean, wow. And when I compare that to 1970s, when I was traveling all over Mexico, it's just phenomenal job. Well done, all of you entrepreneurs. I'm so impressed. So you've become a real force in veganism. Here's another tip that I saw. I'm on the board of Veganuary, which is the nonprofit that started in England, and they ask people to try vegan for January. Here's the ranking of the countries in the world, and only North Korea, Vatican City, and Eswatini had no people pledging to try vegan. All countries in the world had, other than that, pledged to try vegan. They had people pledge. Of course, the United Kingdom, where this has been going on for 7 years, was #1. USA, #2. Germany, Chile, Argentina, and Mexico. Look at that. #6 in all the world of people who pledged. And the fact that Argentina and Chile are still on there too is mind-blowing to me. And so Veganuary this year is putting a lot of money into Mexico, Central America, and South America. So once again, unbelievable. Way to go. And then there's Mr. Tofu. And that is the world's largest vegan grocery chain, which is mind-boggling to me, because in in 2012, Vegans, a German company, tried to do what Mr. Tofu is doing in Mexico. And they had 11 vegan stores all over Germany, which, as you know, is a very vegan-centric country. I think something like 8% of Germany is either vegetarian or vegan. And you know what happened? Vegans had to close 9 of their stores. Today, there's only 2 vegan stores in all of Germany. And here is Mr. Tofu going crazy in Mexico. I think they're up to 13, 14. Monsi would know the number of stores. And it's just amazing how well run that is and what a great thing it is doing in Mexico. You know, and I was going through some photos, and here's H-E-B. I know another chain that we sell in down in Mexico. In 1905, this is what the stores looked like. They were small, and they were run they didn't have these big aisles like what they have today. And Mr. Tofu, I know the stores are small too, but they're growing, and I think that they can be the size of H-E-Bs in probably the next 40 to 60 years. So again, here's Mexico leading the world with the world's largest vegan grocery chain. So what are we going to see in the future? Here's my predictions about 40 years from now. I've been in business 40 years, and I'm looking to 2060. And what am I going to see in Mexico when I'm like 120 or whatever it is by then? So, you know, having seen the US grocery plant-based food section from 1980 being like this to today looking like this, gives me reference for how far vegan foods have come in America now. And so I'm using that as my metric for analyzing growth, because, you know, you have all this great cheese, you got ice cream, you got sausage, you got tempeh, you got tofu, you got everything, milk. So what are we going to look at for Mexico? Here's my predictions. 1, vegan foods will hold a 50% market share in the Mexican supermarket channel. Right now, vegan foods, well, in the US, plant-based milks are 13% of the market, and plant-based meats, 1%. So we're going to grow up here in Gringolandia, but you guys, I think, are going to grow maybe even faster. And I think in 40 years, you will dominate those categories. So hold on to your hats. Prediction number 2, Mr. Tofu will have 1,000 large supermarkets throughout Mexico. I think that they are poised for growth. They're doing a great job of managing growth, and that they can really have some amazing growth in the future. 40 years, the stores are going to be huge. Prediction number 3, there will be more vegan restaurants in Mexico City than non-vegan restaurants. 80 restaurants now out of, you know, the hundreds that there are is still very impressive. And I think that that is going to be a trend for the future, because there's so many reasons why the world should be eating vegan and plant-based foods for health, for the health of animals, and for the health of the planet, that we just can't afford this inefficient cruel way of making protein anymore. So I think you guys are positioned to be in a great place and see great growth. And I wish you the best, because there's nothing so powerful as an idea whose time has come. That was Victor Hugo who said that. And I think now I want to thank you. Mil gracias, muy amable. And I will take any questions. I haven't been following the chat because I've been blabbing here. I have written a book that you can get on Amazon down in Mexico. Sorry, it's in English. Tofurky.com/books. And here we go. So I'll turn it back to you, Rocio, and maybe you can fire out some of the questions, or I'll look at the chat.
Sure. Thank you so much, Seth, for sharing your experience and wisdom and inspiration with us. And we do have a number of questions here on the chat. Let's see.
Well, good. Fire them out.
Okay. Well, I see one question here, but I think you answered this in the presentation. Did you have issues about profit during your first 15 years? Did you lose money during that time?
Oh, yeah. Every year I would go to my tax guy that was doing the taxes, and he would start out, he would ask me, I got 2 questions. How much money did you lose this year? And how are you still in business? And I felt like a failure. I wasn't making money, but I was making enough money to cover my bills, and I was borrowing money from friends and family and then paying it all back. But it was really tight there. And, you know, I really, when you're not making money, you really depend on loans and credit cards. I ran up a lot of credit card debt, and it was a big day when I didn't have that anymore. But you really have to, you know, I think a lot of it is just being able to live cheaply yourself, like whatever that means, whether you have to move in with friends or family and, you know, eat a lot of your product. I ate a lot of tempeh. You just got to strategize, but it's fun too. You know, it's not so depressing not having money. It's actually, when you're growing for the future, it's a fun game. Life becomes a game, but it is hard.
Well, thank you. Yeah, another question from Karina as well. She asks, how different do you think is the Mexican culture regarding meat options? We still have 49% of our people whose main source of protein is chicken and eggs because they are accessible and affordable.
Yeah, well, what I find, you know, people say all over the world, they say, like, for instance, Germany, like when we were going to start selling there, they said, Germans are big meat eaters. Like, why would you think that they would buy Tofurky? And the answer is that where there are meat eaters, there is also a market for the meat alternative culture, because if you can deliver the same taste and texture for a similar price, there's a lot of people who will, you know, that aren't vegan, but that are what we call flexitarians. They eat both animal-based protein and plant-based proteins. That's like 30% of America eats half of their meals plant-based. So if you have these chicken and egg eaters there, I think you have a market for plant-based chicken and plant-based egg too, because you will most certainly have a better nutritional component. And it's a long process, people changing diets, but don't give up trying, because I know that Mexico, like the United States, has a big meat eating history, but don't let that stop you.
Okay, thanks. We have another question from Carlos Macias. First of all, he congratulates you on your perseverance and your success. And he says it's a great incentive to meet you. He has a couple of questions. He says, could you give us some advice on how to position a product in the current market, since there is a greater supply out there?
Well, yeah, market positioning, is different for every brand. I will say that this about, if you're entering the supermarket channel, especially, the things to remember is taste is king, price is queen, and everything else is marketing. So you really, as long as you have like a tasty product, I would focus your marketing on the taste. And you have all these other great reasons for being vegan, which is for the animals, for the planet, for health. But really, when it comes down to it, people want to enjoy their food. So I think you've got to position it. Number one, your marketing has to talk about taste, because taste is the portal to the human heart. And we love to eat, and if we want to enjoy our food, so that's number one. And then it's just whether you have a high-end product that is like ice cream, like a premium ice cream that you want to sell in the high things, or if you're going low and cheap and you want to be the economy seller, you just have to position it that way. But I would say have fun with your marketing, make it humorous, but also focus on taste.
Okay, great. And the second question is, in Mexico, there is a belief that being vegan is a very expensive way of life. Did you face this scenario in your career?
Yeah, I think that it's interesting. There's some myths out there, because I mean, like Tofurky products now are made in volume to the point where our deli slices are the same or cheaper than meat deli slices. Sausage, the same thing. But when you're starting out, it's harder to compete in dollars and cents, because you're not doing the volume. And if you look at the vegan diet in general, like if you're looking at, beans and veggies and grains and rice, that diet, meat can be very expensive. And it's interesting looking at vegetarian history that started out as an economic incentive. Like people were selling it as, this is a cheaper way to eat. This is something, and like the working classes were all on board eating these vegetarian foods just because it was cheaper. So I think that's a myth that can be controlled, although we don't have the advantages that the meat people have in the volume, and the government helps them with their marketing and sales. So it's a little troublesome for that reason. But I wouldn't be afraid when you're starting out to be a little higher. Don't sell yourself short, because you need to make your margin and your money. And as you get bigger, you can lower your price. But in the beginning, if you have something really unique and unusual, people are going to buy it just for the sake of trying it. So make sure that you charge enough, and you'll get there eventually. You can see that in Beyond Burgers. They used to be $6.99 here in the grocery store. Now they've dropped it to $4.99. So it's coming down, but people still will buy it.
Okay, we have a number of other questions, but here's another one from Mariana Isa. She asks, what advice could you share to vegan brands to enter the supermarket channel? Vegan companies have shared that entering into retail is very tough.
Yeah, you know, it is tough, but my advice is to make it, the way we worked, and I don't know what the Mexican natural food channel is like, and whether you can buy sales data or not, but you can certainly create your own sales data about the growth of your company and what you're going to do. You need a sales story to get onto the shelf of supermarkets. So what we did is we first started selling in the little natural food stores and the Whole Foods. And after we had a sales story built up there, then we went to the supermarkets, who are they're looking to attract the natural food customer, because that customer is a high-end demographic that will want to spend they have a lot of disposable income, so they're trying to attract that. And right now, like, even if you don't have specific numbers about how your product is selling in the stores right now, like, for instance, supermarkets in the United States, if they sell 2% more food this year than they did last year, then that's a successful year. Well, right now, the refrigerated meat alternative category in the US is growing at 128% over last year. So when you go in with a product into a category that is growing, I think that's your pitch to the supermarkets, is like, I'm going to grow at 2 or 3 times the rate that all of your other food is. So make room for me on the shelf. So whatever sales data you can get about the vegan category of the specific food that you're in and how fast that is growing, that's a story that you can tell.
Okay, thank you. Another question from Ana Elizondo. She wants to know where she can buy your products here in Mexico, specifically in Monterrey.
Monterrey, Mr. Tofu.
Yes, that's where I buy them, yeah.
I
you
know
mentioned
that
H-E-B. Does H-E-B carry them here?
Yeah, H-E-B has them. I believe they're in produce in H-E-B. So the produce section at H-E-B would have them too. But we love Mr. Tofu.
Let's see. We have more questions here. Well, this is a controversial topic. I don't know. Do you have a position on let's see, genetically modified soy?
Yeah, we don't use it. We use organic soy for all of our products. So we just take the genetically modified out of it. So I would think that that's a selling point for most of your customers in Mexico too. But you know, we just don't know enough about it, so we want to keep it as clean as we can, and we use organic soy and organic tofu, organic beans from small farmers in North America more than we would ever use. We don't buy from China or Brazil or any place like that.
Okay, great. Ana Elizondo is also asking, what is the percentage that you would recommend to offer an investor? Like
Well,
initially?
yeah, that's a great question. Like I said, you know, it really depends on the how much value. Like you want to start out. I really recommend not selling any shares right off. Like if you can go 1 year or 2 years and build a sales story, then you can ask for more money. It depends on what your growth looks like in those years and how you're, what kind of story you can tell. But I would say that, in that sort of, depending on how much money you're looking for, 20% or so would be a top, like to start with. You never want to sell more than, a controlling share. Certainly, don't be 51%, but 10 to 20% is what I would focus on. And, as a rule of thumb, I would say that your valuation of your business can be like 4 or 5 times your gross sales. So if you're selling 100,000 whatever dollars a year or pesos, whatever, then your valuation is maybe 500,000, 400, 500,000. So maybe you're looking for $100,000 for 25% share or 20% share.
Okay, thanks. And Gabriel Navarro would like to know how they can contact Tofurky to sell your products in their store.
Yeah, you can write to info@tofurky.com. And you can also reach out to me and copy me, Seth@tofurky.com, and I'll make sure that the, excuse me, that the sales people learn about it.
Okay. Let's see, Aldo Aleman wants to know what's your opinion about the vegan alternatives being offered by meat companies like Smithfield?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's 2 kinds of meat companies now in America. There are the meat companies and the farmers who are raising cattle, who are trying to enact ag-gag laws, they call them. Like they're trying to say you can't call your product burgers because that's a meat name, and Tofurky is a confusing name. There's confusion. So they're fighting this idea whose time has come. They're fighting, they're trying to get laws made to make it hard for people to sell vegan foods in America. I'm not sure if you have that yet in Mexico, but if not, you will as the products grow in popularity. And then the second company is the kind that just say, this is an opportunity and we're in the protein business. Why don't we make that? And why don't we or buy a company. And as a consumer, you know, I'm sad to see that happen. And yet, as a business person, I understand that. And I would rather see a meat company go vegan and have a vegan part of it than I would have that same company say, we're going to try and crush the vegan revolution and we're going to make laws to make it harder for you to sell your products. So, you know, I think it's overall a positive sign, you know, when whatever ends up killing fewer animals and making veganism stronger, I'm for it.
Okay, yeah, and there's a related question from Alessandro Seta, who asks, will non-vegan companies own the market, citing Nestle as an example?
Well, eventually, I don't know, you know, there's a lot of these companies are starting. What I find is that companies like Nestle, you know, historically, when they buy a vegan company, they screw it up and they don't know what to do with it. That's changing now. Like when these meat companies buy a vegan brand, they know more about the market. They're better at marketing it. But for a long time, you know, still I think, you know, the companies that are owned by passionate vegans are going to be better run and they're going to sell more than the same company that was bought by a meat company. So, but it's an encouraging sign to see, you know, that this interest in plant-based foods now from these huge corporations, because they do have the power to change, and I think they will eventually change, and you know, they can change the world. So it's definitely harder for us right now to compete with, you know, the Beyond Meat and the Impossible Burger and things like that that have all of this funding. Like the Impossible Burger has 120 people in their research and development facility. We have 4. I mean, because we don't have the deep pockets, all the money that they have. They have, like, you know, $750 million or $1 billion or something in investments. So it's challenging for us, but you know, we just do the best that we can and try and be relevant in the world. And maybe we will one day sell some equity of our company because we'll just feel like we need to compete. But so far, that hasn't been our model.
Okay. How are we doing on time, Seth? Because there's so many questions here.
I'm fine. I'm fine.
Okay, so we can keep going for a little bit. Okay. Okay. Let's see. Juan Ortega wants to know, what's your opinion about jackfruit, the jackfruit market in Mexico and in the world?
Jackfruit is changing, in my opinion. You know, at first I didn't like it because it was so sweet. And I think jackfruit doesn't have a lot of protein, so it's hard to market it as a protein alternative, because I think it's like 1 gram for 100 grams or something, 1 gram of protein. But I've had some really good, particularly I've had some good Mexican food with jackfruit. I think jackfruit lends itself well to, you know, the cuisine of Mexico. So like I've had these incredible carnitas and tacos. So I think it's really got a lot of potential as long as it's flavored. As the texture is really nice and it shreds up. So I'm for it. Do they grow jackfruit in Mexico?
I'm not sure. I think they do. I mean, I know they sell it here, but I'm not
yeah,
sure
I
where
know
it's grown.
well, it's mostly I've seen it from Asia and Thailand, and but I was wondering because the climate might be well for it.
Right.
But I love it.
Okay, another question from Tammy Radaj, asking, are you planning on moving towards plastic alternatives for your products? I try to live as zero waste as possible. It is a challenge when you make so many tempting, delicious products.
Yeah, that's a great question too, you know. Like, so the bigger picture, the biggest impact that Tofurky can have on the world and on the environmental impact, the biggest impact of us is just getting people off of this wasteful animal-based protein and into plant-based proteins. The packaging is very important to us, but in order for us to ship our products to stores and have them be fresh and have them given the shelf life that is needed in order to sell in all of these 27,000 stores, there is no alternative yet for the plastic and nylon coated plastic that we are forced to use right now. Like if we were selling in just a small local market where you don't need such long shelf life, it would be a lot easier to do that. But safety is obviously first. We don't want anybody to get sick or have a moldy product, so we have to really be responsive to the market and, you know, just be, if there was a sustainable product, like for instance, we use 100% recycled cartons in our packaging, so we do that where we can, but for the actual products inside that there's the plastic, we have to use what we have now. So but we continually watch for that, and we would love to see a more sustainable inner package, but our outer packages are all recycled cardboard, paperboard.
Okay, thank you. Claudia Scorza wants to know how many years from you starting your business to making it to Jeopardy?
Oh, what was that? Well, it was like 2002, so 22. Just 22 short years.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to keep things in perspective. Yeah. Let's see. Flora wants to know, how did you manage or tackle the price of the product when the sales were low?
How did we manage the price?
Yeah.
Yeah, I made a mistake. When my sales were low, I tried to sell at too low of a price. I was the first tempeh that people had tried. So when a product is new, people will pay more. And I was also local. And so I'll tell you, you know, like I said in the introduction, I wasn't too smart about business. I had to figure it out as I go. But when you're small, you need to have the margin, and you can afford a higher margin because people will buy your product for reasons other than price, and that's what I didn't get. So part of the reasons I lost so much money was I didn't plan for, I wasn't selling at a high enough price. Like you look at things like, I don't know, computers or DVD players or something, you know, they used to be $1,000 when they were new and people were happy to pay it. Now you can buy one, you know, it's like $25, $50. So when you have something new and creative, you can sell it for more. So I would encourage her to make sure that she's making enough margin and to sell our products, because I think people will buy for different reasons. Sometimes they'll even buy more when the price is high, because they'll think, oh, this is really got to be good because it's so expensive. The first Tofurky was $34 or something like that in the stores, and this was 1995. So,
Wow, that was expensive.
but it fed 8 people. But
Oh,
still,
okay.
it was in the freezer, with where the highest price item below that was like, they said, don't go over $4 in your pricing, and we were selling at $34. And it wasn't like that. There again, our margin, these were like a handcrafted product, and you know, we needed that kind of margin just to pay. We should have charged more, but we didn't. But they sold because people would drive 5 hours to get their Tofurky, and they gladly pay $30 for it. At the holidays, you know, every day use, they wouldn't pay that much, but you know, to make somebody feel welcome in your home once a year, why not? $30, sure.
Great. Let's see, one more question. What are some key administrative job positions that really aid in boosting your business?
Well, you know, number one is the sales department. You know, I would pay the sales people more than I pay myself when we were, you know, just getting going with Tofurky, because I just valued, I knew that that was the lifeblood of the business. So I didn't mind paying a really, really good salesperson that was getting all of this growth and funneling it and going out there making these deals. So I'd say, first of all, was sales. And then second of all, you know, was just a, a plant manager that we had. We had this wonderful woman, Graciela, who was just really knew good people skills and was able to keep everybody happy and focused in production. And then number 3 would be just finance, somebody that really knew finance. But you know, finance is obviously important, and you can save money by looking at your numbers and going over your numbers. But the most important thing is just taking care of your customer. If you're in touch with your customer and you're bringing value to that customer, you're going to be fine. Managing your business just on money, you might as well be on the back of a boat looking at the wake and where the boat has gone. You know, you really want to just be making sure that you're really in touch with your customer and their needs. So that's the big thing.
Okay. Gosh, we have so many questions. Let's see. Well, here's another one. Aline Padilla from Poderosa. She, you know, they want to grow, but she says that machinery is a problem. Do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, so machinery and scaling up is a problem. And, you know, it's amazing. Like, you want to get the best machinery you can. I started out, you know, buying used equipment. The more moving parts something has, like a vacuum sealing machine, I would never buy used because it has all these parts. But something like a kettle doesn't have very many moving parts. Why would you buy new? I mean, I just would buy kettles used. But manufacturers, you know, they need to sell too. And a lot of times you can cut deals with them. Like, you can say, I want to try your machine in my plant for 30 days, and I will just give me a trial, bring it into the plant for a trial, and I'll pay shipping there and I'll pay shipping back if we don't buy it. And if they really want to sell machines, they will we'll do that. But there's also, you know, you can lease equipment. You can start out with, you know, used equipment. There's ways to get around it. When we first started making Tofurky in our plant, we had these bowls that were bowl choppers that were small, and we could only put like 10 kilos of product in them at a time. And they would make good product, but the way that we knew that the Tofurky was done and that the tofu and the wheat gluten had mixed properly was they started to dance across the floor. And so, you know, it was, they were you just have to start with whatever you can afford. But so buy the best quality equipment you can, even if it's smaller than you need, because you could run like 100 batches through there, as opposed to getting like a big, huge mixer that you could make 5 or 10 batches, but it was used. I would go with the smaller one that is brand new and that you're not going to have so many headaches for. So you just have to scale it up. It's really a challenge because the market's not there, but you need to buy equipment as if the market is there and is going to be there. But you know, by and large, you can always sell the equipment if it doesn't work out. So it's not a terrible risk, but buy new where you can and buy the best possible one that you can. Don't go cheap on it.
Okay. Thanks for the advice. Maybe just like 1 or 2 more questions because we're already past an hour and a half. What is your opinion regarding the large number of vegan processed products on the market, which almost completely lose what's natural in the diet?
Yeah, I think that, you know, first of all, like the definition, what is the definition of a processed product? Is bread processed? Because Tofurky is like a bread-based manufacturing process. You know, you're kneading dough and then you're steaming it and all that. But I think, yeah, that, you know, having like salads and whole plant-based foods are great, but I also think there's a place for the quote unquote more processed, like meat alternatives. And, you know, that word gets talked about a lot. And I often see meat eaters, like I was looking at Impossible Foods had a post on Facebook, and there were all these meat eaters going, yeah, meat's great. It's only one ingredient. Well, it is only one ingredient, but it's a terrible ingredient, you know, and they're saying, oh, look at all the ingredients you have in the Impossible Burger. Therefore, it's not healthy for you. So I think that critique is sometimes used in the wrong way to people, but, you know, definitely plant-based whole foods, you know, as long as it's sustainable for people, I think is a great way to go, and it's a superior way to go. But me, I do both. I like the quote unquote processed or meat alternatives, but I also like the, you know, just grains and polenta, and I'm going to have polenta for dinner.
Yummy. Great. Okay, maybe one last question, and I apologize to anyone that we, you know, might have not answered their questions, but there were quite a few. Do you think, well, this is from Claudia Escorza, do you think if you hadn't realized you needed to switch from tempeh to tofu, you might have given up?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think so. You know, at that point in my life, I was looking for a way out, and one of my projects that I was trying to do was I was trying to write a book on tree houses, and when I was living in the treehouse, all these people were writing me about their own tree houses. So I was collecting all these addresses and I was going around and filming these. So I wanted out, you know, because I had a family at that point. I wasn't just me living in a tree anymore. And I really needed to bring in some more money for the family. So I would have probably, I don't know what I would have done, but for sure, if I had been successful in writing this treehouse book, I couldn't have done both. You know, Tofurky would have probably never happened. And even though I was disappointed when the publisher rejected my treehouse book, it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened. And, you know, tempeh is still in this country. I mean, it's growing at 40%, but of the 9 subcategories of meat alternatives that, like, there's burgers, there's sausage, there's hot dogs, there's deli slices, there's ground, there's breakfast, and then right at the bottom is tempeh. And that doesn't mean that it's not great, and that, like, we still make a lot of tempeh and I really believe in it, but it's a very small compared to these other subcategories, but it is doing some nice growth. So but I would have probably quit. Yeah, probably. I don't know.
Oh, well, we're certainly glad that didn't happen.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Seth, for this. It's been wonderful. I'm sure everyone enjoyed it, and we can see by the number of questions and comments that have come in. Again, apologies if we didn't get to your question this time. But thank you everyone for being with us today. We hope you truly enjoyed our webinar and found it useful. We invite you to follow us, the Asociación de Emprendedores Veganos de México, and our upcoming events. We are on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and our webpage is aevm.mx. We also would like to ask you to please complete a short survey of 4 questions, which will appear on your screen in a moment, to give us feedback about the type of content you would like to receive. Thanks again from the bottom of our hearts to Seth Tibbott for his generosity, sharing his wisdom and his support for vegan entrepreneurs in Mexico. And thank you all for being with us. We hope to see you soon.
Can I say one thing?
Please.
If you do have a question that didn't get answered, you know, you can email me, seth@tofurky.com, and I'd be happy to answer the question for you over email. And I don't mind helping out that way if we can. So it's seth@tofurky.com.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. That is so generous, Seth. I'm sure everybody appreciates it. I hope you don't mind.
Oh, no.
Let it with email.
No, that would be fine. I love, like I said, the energy and the mission behind what's happening in Mexico and all of the hard work everybody's doing. And I've been there, and if a dummy like me can succeed, you guys can succeed even better, and you're way ahead of me. So good luck.
You're such an inspiration to everyone, as you can see. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone again. And we hope to have you here in Mexico in person.
Oh yeah.
Soon.
First trip after the virus goes, Mexico City.
Awesome. Thank you, Seth. Yeah. Thank you everyone. Hope to see you soon. Good luck everyone.